Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhearn.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. So given that we record about 10 days or so before we release the podcast, we're recording now on December 5th, and I don't know about you, but I'm really glad that this whole Black Friday, Cyber Monday thing is over, though it's not really over yet, because I keep getting emails from different companies. It's like the tail end of Cyber Monday.
Yeah, it's Cyber Week now, or it's post-Cyber Monday week, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Black Friday fortnight.
Exactly. I heard that there was some record number of people who were shopping on Black Friday, like throughout the entire U.S. at least. And so it's been good for retailers, hopefully for small retailers too. So I totally get that people want to keep doing sales and things, but it kind of felt like the election where you kept getting so many notifications and it's like, yes, I know that the Black Friday thing is still going on. I've already spent my money, so no.
Exactly. I didn't buy any photography stuff, or I didn't buy a memory card. We talked about this last time. I didn't buy any portable SSDs because I've got enough. I went through it and basically bought cat food. That's about it.
Excellent. Well, I mean, that also contributes to your photography in an indirect way.
Because it keeps my cats fit so I can take pictures of them.
Exactly. I actually did. I bought a new softbox that I could use for some upcoming flash things. So
good. Okay.
Yeah.
So today we want to talk about all the mess that's in your photo library. We're not judging. Not you. It's the other guy and the other woman who've got mess in their photo library. It's not you, dear listener. We all have too many photos. Although, see, my technique comes in really handy when we talk about this, that I download my photos to my Mac, put them in a folder, decide what I'm then going to put in my photos library or whatever app I'm using. So I don't have all that cruft in my library. Now, I do have that cruft in a folder, which is like 20 gigabytes of things that I haven't deleted. But when I go through them, I quickly delete anything that's bad, like I took a picture of my shoes, or it's out of focus, or there's a blur, that sort of thing. I quickly delete that sort of photo. The ones I keep are mostly usable at a minimum. But I generally delete most of what I download. But whereas other people, they'll just connect their computer and put everything into Lightroom or Photos. And today, Jeff is going to tell you how to get rid of all that stuff, because I don't need to know how to get rid of all that stuff. If I look at my Photos library, see, this is really good. My Photos library has, where do I see how many photos I have? I have 4,292 photos. That's it.
Wow. You barely take any photos, apparently. If someone were to just look at your library, they'd be like, he doesn't take very many pictures. But it's because
– do you know how many of these are screenshots too?
Oh, no, don't even start there. I know that's bad.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
With my Apple Watch book that came out recently, I have so many Apple Watch screenshots. It's really absurd. But what you say actually points out a key thing, whereas I think even though – today we're going to talk about how to clean up your library as it is. You've already done that. You just chose to do it at the beginning of the process rather than the end of the process, because all of us are going to have photos that we don't want, don't need, whether it's the pictures of your shoes or whether it's shots that didn't come out, or maybe you shot a whole bunch of burst images. And of course, you don't need every single one of those. And so it's a matter of asking yourself, do I want to do this in advance like you do? Or do I want to put it off for another day? And that day is now, which is more of my approach.
Now? Today? You have to do this today?
I'm going to do this live. This is going to be a 20-hour podcast. But audio only. I'm not going to share my screen.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that this came up for me is that because I use Lightroom, I have a finite amount of cloud storage, because with the regular Lightroom app, everything goes up to the cloud. And it's great because that lets me sync things to all my devices, et cetera, et cetera. But that amount is starting to get really full. And so I'm starting to get little banners in Lightroom that says, your storage is almost full. And of course, they would love to sell me some more storage, but I don't need to pay extra for storage because I know that I have lots and lots of photos that have been synced that don't need to be there. I just haven't gotten to it.
So you got 2 terabytes now.
I do, yeah.
And you can go up to like 10 or 20 with Lightroom, I
I'm
think.
not even sure.
Because this is for professionals, so you can go to really big numbers there.
There's a 2 terabyte plan, and then you add on after that at different tiers. So you say like, I want an extra terabyte, and then you pay like a big chunk of money. I haven't investigated it because I feel a little bad that I'm already at 2 terabytes and I'm getting full. So I'm not going to give them any more money because I think Adobe gets plenty of my money.
I think they get a lot of money, yeah. I'm just looking on the web quickly, and I can't really say, but I know that I think you can actually have as much storage as you want, and you can just keep paying. It's not like with some services like iCloud where it's limited to that 2 terabytes. I think they'll let you, because again, they're trying to do this for professionals. So I think they'll let you take whatever you want. So basically, you want to save money and not have to pay more. And in order to do this, you have to clean up.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of things to clean up when you think about it. What would you say, what percentage of photos are really important? By that, I mean keepers, your best photos, your second best photos, maybe your third best photos that you want to keep. But what percentage would you say you want to keep out of all your photos?
That is a very good question. So out of my entire library, well, and all right, not to get too far in the weeds, my Lightroom library that gets synced is currently 61, almost 62,000 photos. That's not the size of, I know. That's not the size of my full Lightroom library because when I was using Lightroom Classic, that's where everything went before the cloud thing even happened. And so that has 163,000 images in it. Most of those are just stored on an offline drive. But this long pause is me thinking and doing math. I mean, I would say –
how long is it going to take to clean out, let's say, 25% of those? Here's the problem, right?
This is the problem.
You don't want to delete any of them. But, of course, what you can do is you can remove them from your Lightroom library and then put them in a folder on your computer to save them just in case.
Yes, exactly. And, in fact, one nice new feature that they introduced this last year in Lightroom is you can archive photos that are currently in the cloud so that they're only stored locally, which is nice, which is probably what I'm going to do – for some events or some things that I know I don't need these on a regular basis, but there's that aspect of all my pictures are wonderful and they all deserve to be they all deserve to live.
Well, okay, let's take an example. Let's say you were shooting a portrait of someone and you shot 50 photos and you had 3 or 4 that were really good. You don't really need to keep the rest. You're not going to decide. You're not going to decide in 5 years. Well, this lighting wasn't perfect, but I like it. Now, on the other hand, you're making the
go ahead.
On the other hand, you could save this because you're going to do an article about it and show the things that were wrong, and you want to show the things that were right.
Yeah, exactly. So 2 things are happening right there. One, you're right. I actually need to make a point of saving bad photos that I can show as examples, like something that's like a really noisy, dark, high ISO that would just normally get thrown away. I can use that, but I'm sure I have many, many, many more examples of that than I need. But the other part of that too is I do run into images that I thought were not that great, but maybe it has captured a personal memory or something that at the time I was being more critical and I was like, okay, well, there's some sort of technical flaw with this image, so I'm just going to set that aside. And then I go back and I realize, oh, well, the technical problem is not that big of a deal, but it captures the light or the scene or the situation or the person or whatever. So the danger of this is that my brain says – there might be a gem in there somewhere. You don't want to throw it away. Even though the other part of my brain says, dude, there are so many of those that you can throw away. But it has happened when something that I thought was just a goner is actually something that I want to keep. And so it tricks me in that way.
Okay, so here's what anyone could do. Similar to what I'm doing, right? I download the photos to my Mac and then I put them in the library. Is you could, when you import your photos, you could immediately rate them.
Yes.
And in that case, you could eliminate all the 5-star, 4-star, maybe even 3-star, and look at the rest. You can make smart albums, you can sort through them, and that would be the easiest way. But you have to remember to do that every time. If you skip it once, then you're stuck because you have to go through everything.
Yeah. So a little product placement here. In my book, Take Control of Your Digital Photos, available right now.
You have a book called Take Control of Digital Photos.
Yes, I do.
That's very good to know. Let's put a link in the show notes.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Okay.
It's bad because you and I are prolific Take Control authors. So, dear listener, if you've not visited Take Control, go to takecontrolbooks.com and find our stuff. But anyway, in Take Control of Your Digital Photos, one of the things that I advocate is setting up a rating system. And after you have imported your photos, just try to rate them as fast as you can. You don't have to linger on anything. All you're doing is just trying to mark the things that have potential and get rid of the things. Or in my case, if there's something that's really bad, I just mark it as rejected. So I'm not actually having to go through the process of deleting it. And that way, that little bit of culling does help a lot later on. So that, like for right now, I could go into my Lightroom library and do a search for 1-star photos. And 1-star photos are probably going to be either ones that I've put off or ignored or I don't want anymore that are just there. The key thing here, though, is to be consistent about it, is to make sure you do it. And although I've written a book and I advocate for this, I'm not always good about doing that. As a quick example, this last week, we took our family holiday card photo. And, of course, I took way more pictures than I needed because that's how it goes. And I was focused on finding something that we could use, editing it, get it uploaded to the card company that we wanted to place an order from, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think all of those have been rated like I normally would because I had a deadline. I had a focus for that. I think one of the important things about this whole task is to be able to start somewhere, because if you sit down,
if you put it off until next year and then the year after that and the year after that, then you'll be running out of stories.
Exactly. And if you sit down right now and say, I'm going to clean my library and I'm going to accomplish this task right now. If you have a large library, you're not going to do that in one sitting. You want to break that down into, for example, just filter all my images that are 1-star.
There are a few ways you could do this, and you mentioned an example before we started recording. Choose something with a high ISO and a low shutter speed. And so I did that. I don't shoot a lot of high ISO, but I did an album with ISO 6400 or more and shutter speed less than or equal to 1/40th of a second. It only comes up with 11 photos, but some of them are actually really good. These are photos I shot with the Q2 monochrome, which is really good at high ISO. So there is a serendipity of finding photos that are better than you think, and you can rate them that way. Now, I'm not sure that there are all sorts of things. You could do high ISO, you could do shutter speed, you could do specific cameras or lenses. But one way to do it is maybe just make a smart album for every year, right? And then you just go through 1 year, and when you've rated all of them and deleted all of them, you delete the album. Instead of going for different criteria, like, is this going to be good because it's a high ISO or a low shutter speed? Is it going to be blurry? Maybe just doing an annual thing. I mean, how many people have more than 20 years of digital photos? Not many.
Not many, yeah. Well, and actually, you mentioned your Leica. And looking through your library, a photo that has an ISO of 6400 shot with your Leica is going to have a much different quality than ISO 6400 shot with, say, my XT1, my Fuji XT1, which did not do as well in high ISO low light situations. So that would be a prime example of show me all the photos that I shot with my Fuji XT1 and show me everything that's ISO 6400 and above. That would probably result in a lot of photos that are just not good that I could easily delete. So that's one strategy, would be pick out things that are most likely to not be good photos, and you'll definitely find some keepers, and there's going to be some that you're going to be on the fence. So you can keep those there. But trying to get the low-hanging fruit as much as possible will make a huge difference.
Well, you can start by making smart albums by camera, and I have a smart album for every camera I've had, every digital camera I've had. And the older ones weren't as good. The resolution wasn't good. As you say, the ISO wasn't as good with your XT1. So if I go back to my Olympus EM10, which I bought in 2013, there are some nice photos. There's, let's see, 166 photos left. Here's 4 photos of the same thing, and some of them look like I duplicated them to try different post-processing things on them. Here's another 4 photos of the same thing. Some of them look like they went through Snapseed, etc. And yeah, I could probably delete half of these photos. And again, these are the ones that I kept after deleting when I imported into the things. I was pretty good about that. Mm-hmm. So you might want to just start by going through each camera you've had and remembering what the camera was capable of and seeing if there were photos that just aren't that good. Because also, you're probably going to have specific memories of what you shot with a specific camera. Unless you change cameras every year, you know that there's a period. You've had this camera for 3 years. You went on this vacation. You had this maybe professional shoot that you had to do. You met these people, etc. So you're going to have there's going to be a context for a specific camera. If you have 2 cameras at the same time, it makes it a little bit more complicated. But you've still got this context around a specific camera that will let you know, and your brain will go back and yes, I remember that camera. It was good at this. It wasn't good at rendering colors. It was good at ISO, etc. And you'll be able to look at the photos more critically. So if you do change cameras from time to time, I mean, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm not counting my iPhone, 5, 6, 7 different cameras here, 4, 6, 8 different cameras, not counting my iPhone. Mm-hmm. So I could go through each one of those 8 cameras and weed things out. Of course, then you get the iPhone pictures. And the problem is that some of those early iPhone pictures are grotty.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking back at what I did with my iPhone 5 and they were bad. They were really bad.
Although.
But you might want to keep them. There's pictures of your kids' first steps. There's pictures when I got Titus in 2013 with an iPhone 4S, I think. Mm-hmm. Very low resolution, noisy, etc. But I want to keep the pictures of the little cute kitty cat.
Oh, yeah, totally. Totally. So this also brings up the idea of having lots of photos of the same thing. And so one example of that would be like you're shooting in burst mode. I have somewhere in my library, and I think I actually culled this down once, and I need to do another pass. I was on a photo workshop, and the light was amazing, and I was there was a lighthouse, and the surf was breaking, and so I took a lot. I took hundreds and hundreds of photos in fast burst mode to try to see, freeze the action, get the right curl of the waves and the droplets and all of that. And I found 1 or 2, but then I just left them all there. So I know that there's just a ton of shots like that in my library. So one option would be go through your library, just scan through your library, and once you see a full screen of essentially the same image, go through and delete a lot of those, mark a lot of those for deletion. But there's another thing you can do. In Lightroom Classic, it has a feature that will let you stack your images. So it's under the photo menu, and it's under stacking, called Auto Stack by Capture Time, which is really kind of brilliant because when you're shooting in burst mode, everything's going to be the same second or the same, like within a couple seconds of each other. So we can go through and grab those 10 or 15 shots, that burst that you made, and make it one stack, and that will help you identify which things have been in burst mode. Another thing I would recommend too is just looking for duplicates. The Photos app now has a category for duplicates. It takes a bit of time to review them. It's not just going to say this is a duplicate and then delete it, but it will help you find things that either, like you were saying, things that you had maybe done a few different processing experiments with, or you hit the shutter button twice when you were taking a shot, something like that. So that can also be really helpful. And an easy way to get rid of images quickly before you have to go into the more nitty-gritty, is this a good photo, that sort of evaluation.
So if you get rid of the duplicates and the burst mode photos, then you can stop because you've gotten rid of so many photos that you've got plenty of room.
Maybe, hopefully.
It depends on how you shoot. I mean, if you're shooting sports, even as an amateur, you're going to be shooting burst mode a lot. So you're going to be looking for that one photo that just catches something, and all the rest are no good. The receiver hasn't caught the ball, the batter hasn't hit the ball, whatever. You can just dump those immediately. But again, it depends on what people shoot. I mean, if you shoot 500 vacation photos, actually, see, this is a good time to look at your vacation photos and say, do you really need these? Do you really want to annoy people showing 500 vacation photos on your TV set through Apple TV as you go through them? And there's like almost no difference in 20 photos of the cathedral of whatever. Good time to go through them and cull out the ones that aren't important.
Sorry, I'm laughing because depending on what you think of your in-laws who come over for the holidays, maybe that's exactly what you want to do. No, that's a really good point.
It's true, though, that vacations are the kind of place where you take a lot of pictures because we don't pay to process photos anymore. It's not like in the old days. You just press the thing on your iPhone or your camera and you get photos. So you're going to take more photos than you need just in case. Another thing is taking photos of people. I met up with my son and his girlfriend in London a few weeks ago, right? I want to take a picture of them. We were eating lunch together, take a picture of them together, right? Took a picture, another one. On all three of the pictures, one of them was blinking. And I should have just done a burst mode thing to get around that, right? And so if you do that with people with burst mode, you get rid of the ones when they're blinking as soon as you can rather than hold on to them. So there's always that problem shooting with people. If you're shooting with a large group, forget about it. There's always someone blinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then I would also say before we wrap up that there's also – this almost sounds like cheating, but hey, who cares? There's also the option of maybe you don't have the time to go through things, but you really need to clean things out. You can export your originals or save your originals however you have things stored and store them on another drive. Now, you may not be able to see them. So what makes me pause for this idea is if my photos are, say, in another catalog and it's not in front of me, then they basically don't exist. But what you can do is you can say, all right, all these images from 2015, I know there's a whole bunch that I just don't know. You export those out, you store them somewhere else. So you still have them. They still exist. But at least in terms of the Photos app storage or Lightroom cloud storage, those aren't going to count toward your cloud storage or maybe your internal laptop storage. You're basically just sort of pushing this off for another day, which was kind of the problem that we started with. But if you're desperate for space, that will work. And then another possibility for that is this will tie into something we've talked to before. I really like the app Picto. I always say it wrong. Picto. For that, because that will let you have different catalogs on different drives and be able to see it all basically in one giant library. So that would be something to look into if you really decide that things need to be in different places. They need to be stored in a separate catalog on another external drive or whatever. But that's a possibility.
So there's a lot to do. It's just a question of doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a question of sitting down in front of your computer, working out a strategy, whether it's by camera, by year, by location also, right? When you look on the map of different locations or photos of people, if you've got your Photos app recognizing people, different ways to do it. For some people, location's really good. Like you went to Italy recently, right? Mm-hmm. So you can look at all the photos in Italy. You can cull them, and it's really easy. You went to Stockholm not long ago for a weekend or a week or whatever, and that's a good way to cull that sort of photo.
Yeah.
So there's all these criteria. Choose what is most effective and start someplace, because if not, we'll tell you to do this again sometime next year.
Exactly. We'll ask in our Facebook group, so Did anybody actually do this? How did you do? But I think the key thing here is make sure you're hitting the easiest stuff first. That makes the whole process easier. So if that means you're just finding lots of duplicates, like start there. It'll make you feel.
But one thing to point out is that photos are getting bigger because resolutions are getting higher. So if it's a question of how much cloud space you're using up, it's going to increase more each year. If you're shooting 48 megapixel iPhone photos now compared to 12 megapixel before, if you've got a 40 megapixel Fuji now instead of a 26, it's taking up more space. And also don't forget that if you're shooting raw in JPEG, you've got duplicate photos. So that's another thing. And they might show up as one photo in your photo library. And you don't realize that there's actually two. Now, to be fair, JPEGs don't take up a lot of space compared to RAW, but there's just too many photos.
But when you have 10,000 of them, it takes up a lot of space. Yeah.
Well, when you have 10,000 or 100,000 or whatever, it takes up a lot of space. I checked on my photo import folder. So the folder on my Finder of the photos that I imported didn't put into my photos library. It's 130 gigabytes, which is twice the size of my photos library.
Yeah.
So that could need to be culled too, because my iMac only has a terabyte of storage.
Right.
So I think I'm going to go through that. And in fact, don't just cull your photos library. If you keep photos someplace else like I do, maybe go through them.
Yeah.
And probably the easiest thing would be to get rid of all the JPEGs in the raw JPEG pairs, because I'll still be able to see the photo if it's raw.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Great place to start.
Thanks for listening to PhotoActive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's photoactivecast in one word. You can subscribe to PhotoActive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes or in your podcast app.